Ready yourselves, men.
What if I told you that everything you believed in was not true? We are used to thinking of the modern world as the pinnacle of technological progress, where engineers create materials capable of withstanding any load. We look at skyscrapers made of glass and concrete with confidence that they will stand forever, symbolizing our superiority over our ancestors. However, walking through the streets of modern cities, we often see cracks in buildings that were constructed only a couple of decades ago. Bridges require major repairs after 20 years of use, and road surfaces disappear every spring along with the snow. At the same time, somewhere in the wilderness of Europe, on a windswept hill stands a castle built in the 12th century. Its walls have seen hundreds of winters, withstood sieges by heavy artillery, and survived dozens of earthquakes without a single steel rod inside. These structures seem not just like stones piled on top of each other, but monolithic parts of the rock with which they have grown together. Modern scientists have racked their brains for years trying to figure out the chemical composition of the mortar that binds these blocks together. We have long been told that medieval builders acted at random, having neither education nor precise instruments. But the results of their labor laugh at our modern standards of durability and reliability. The secret of their craftsmanship lies not in magic or the help of alien civilizations, but in a lost understanding of the chemistry and physics of materials. Today, we will reveal the technology that made it possible to create stone capable of healing its own wounds over centuries. Watch the video to the end, and you will learn the true price expressed in sweat, pain, and lives of simply building a roof over one's head in medieval England. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret that has been under our feet for centuries. The main mistake in the modern perception of medieval construction is that we consider their mortar to be simply glue for stones. We are used to thinking that builders mixed lime in the same way that we mix cement today, cold and in a concrete mixer. However, recent studies of ancient walls have shown that the process was fundamentally different and much more dangerous. Medieval craftsmen used a method that we now call hot mixing technology. The essence of this method was to add quicklime directly to a wet mixture of sand and fillers right on the construction site. When quicklime came into contact with water, a violent chemical reaction began, releasing an enormous amount of heat. The temperature inside the mixture could reach hundreds of degrees, causing the water to literally boil in the solution. It was an extremely risky activity, requiring workers to exercise extreme caution and protect their eyes and skin. Any mistake could result in severe chemical and thermal burns that took a long time to heal. It was this high temperature that changed the very structure of the future binder at the molecular level. The lime crystals formed in a completely different way than during cold slaking, creating incredibly strong bonds with sand and stone. The hot solution penetrated the smallest pores of the stone, literally fusing with it into a single hole as it cooled. This created a monolith that was closer in its properties to natural rock than to an artificial wall. The modern Portland cement that we use everywhere is designed for fast setting and high initial strength. It becomes as hard as steel in a matter of days, but this hardness makes it brittle and unable to adapt. Medieval lime mortar, on the other hand, remained elastic for many years and even centuries after laying. Moreover, during the hot mixing process, small lumps of pure lime remained in the mortar, which did not have time to react immediately. For a long time, engineers considered these inclusions to be a sign of shoddy workmanship or poor preparation of materials by ancient builders. In fact, these calcium pockets were an ingenious delayed action mechanism built into the structure. They served as a strategic reserve of strength that was activated only when the wall was in danger. When microcracks inevitably appeared in the wall due to age or stress, rainwater began to penetrate it. The water reached these hidden capsules of lime and dissolved them, turning them into a saturated alkaline solution. This liquid flowed into the crack and, upon contact with the air, recrystallized into solid calcium carbonate. The wall literally healed itself, repairing the damage without human intervention. This process could be repeated hundreds of times throughout the life of the building, constantly renewing its structure. Modern concrete with reinforcement inside begins to deteriorate from the inside due to metal rust when exposed to moisture. Medieval walls only became stronger when exposed to moisture, using water as a catalyst for repair. This is a fundamentally different philosophy of construction, designed not for years but for millennia. We lost this technology in the pursuit of speed of construction and cheap materials in the industrial era. We needed to build quickly, high, and in large quantities, and slow lime did not fit into this rhythm. Now we are paying billions of dollars for this rush, annually repairing infrastructure that cannot last even half a century. Paradoxically, a return to the primitive methods of the past may be the salvation for the construction of the future. Do you agree? Please tell us what you think about this. Every opinion is valuable. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next discoveries. What if everything you've been taught about fortress towers is outdated? We are used to seeing beautiful towers and castles, considering their shape to be merely a tribute to the architectural fashion of the time. However, the evolution of the tower's shape, from square to round, was dictated by the harsh laws of physics and warfare. The first stone fortresses, following Roman traditions, often had square or rectangular towers. But time and the practice of siege warfare quickly revealed the fatal flaw of such a simple and straightforward shape. The corners of a square tower turned out to be its most vulnerable spot, the Achilles heel of the entire structure. When struck by siege weapons or during attempts to undermine the tower, it was the corner masonry that was destroyed first, pulling down the entire wall with it. But there was another, equally important problem related to military tactics and visibility. Square towers had so-called dead zones directly in front of the corners, which defenders could not shoot through. Enemy sappers could get close to the very foundation under the cover of the corner and work quietly, remaining invisible to the archers above. This made the square tower an easy target and a dangerous place for the defenders themselves. The transition to round towers was a real revolution in medieval fortification science. The round shape perfectly distributed the load from the blows of the catapults across the entire surface of the wall. When a heavy cannonball hit a round wall, the energy of the impact often ricocheted off, causing minimal damage. The ricochet saved the masonry, where a direct hit on the flat wall of a square tower would have broken through. The absence of corners meant there were no weak points that could be targeted with a pickaxe or crowbar. It was much more difficult for enemy sappers, as the round tower did not provide convenient points to start digging. The view from the round tower was much better, giving defenders a panoramic view of the battlefield without blind spots. Now every meter of space around the base of the tower was covered by crossfire from neighboring fortifications. Round towers were also more resistant to natural ground movements and foundation settlement. The arch structure of the masonry worked in compression, self-structuring under the weight of the stone. Even if part of the foundation was washed away by water, a round tower often remained intact, while a square one simply fell apart at the seams. It was a victory of geometry over brute force of destruction. Inside such towers, vaulted ceilings were often used, which further pulled the walls together. Each floor became a kind of stone ring, holding the structure from bursting from the inside. Spiral staircases built into the thickness of the wall also acted as stiffeners. The entire structure was a single, interconnected organism. The construction of a round tower required more skilled masons and more complex stone processing. Each block of the outer cladding had to be carved with a specific radius of curvature. This made construction more expensive and increased the time required. But the lords were willing to pay for safety. History has shown that these were the most profitable real estate investments of that era. Many of these round towers still stand today, outliving not only their creators, but also the empires they defended. They have become silent witnesses to how the right shape can defeat time. I wonder how this theme is perceived by modern architects designing round skyscrapers. In the next chapter, you will learn the secret of the ingredients that were added to the mortar straight from the kitchen. What do you think a castle and a hearty meal have in common? Are you ready to learn the truth about what your walls ate? Medieval chronicles sometimes contain strange records of construction expenses that resemble a shopping list for a feast. The bills include thousands of eggs, barrels of wine, cottage cheese, beer, and even bull's blood. For a long time, historians considered this to be either an exaggeration or ritual sacrifices for good luck. But modern chemistry has confirmed that builders used organic additives consciously and extremely effectively. It turns out that ordinary cottage cheese or soft cheese contains casein, a complex protein with adhesive properties. When mixed with lime, casein forms insoluble calcium compounds that are as strong as stone. This solution became waterproof and incredibly hard after drying. It was often used for laying particularly important joints or for exterior plastering to protect walls from rain. Egg white was another secret ingredient added to the solution to give it special properties. The protein acted as a plasticizer, making the mixture more malleable and easier for masons to work with. But its main property became apparent later. It accelerated setting and increased the surface strength of the joint. This was critically important in the construction of high arches and vaults, where the mortar had to hold its shape. In some regions of Europe, beer or wine was added to the mortar, and this was not a waste of valuable products. The alcohol and sugars contained in these beverages affected the rate of lime crystallization and the structure of the pores. They acted as antifreeze, allowing construction work to continue even in light frosts. In Asia, parallel to the Europeans, the builders of the Great Wall of China used their own unique organic component: sticky rice. Rice broth was mixed with slaked lime to produce a composite material with incredible characteristics. The amylopectin contained in rice created a dense microstructure that was resistant to water and even earthquakes. Some sections of the wall, bonded with rice mortar, are still impossible to break even with a modern sledgehammer. The addition of animal wool or straw to the plaster acted as micro-reinforcement, preventing cracks from appearing as it dried. The fibers bound the material from the inside, distributing the stress evenly across the entire surface. It was a prototype of modern fiber-reinforced concrete, only made from completely natural materials. Builders intuitively understood the principles of composite materials hundreds of years before the term was coined. There were also recipes that included volcanic ash if it was available in the region. Of course, using food products in construction was an expensive luxury, affordable only for royal or church projects. These delicious walls still stand today, reminding us that nature provides the most reliable building materials. We try to synthesize complex polymers, while our ancestors simply opened the pantry. Their science was the science of observation and experimentation with what was at hand. Did you like the idea of building with food? If so, please like this video. It will help us do more investigations like this. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. Guess what happened next when the builders encountered swampy ground? Many of Europe's greatest cathedrals and castles stand on soil that a modern engineer would consider completely unsuitable for construction. Venice, St. Petersburg, massive cathedrals in the marshy lowlands of England, all of them defy gravity and common sense. The secret to their stability lies deep beneath the ground and water. Medieval engineers understood that a stone wall would simply sink or collapse on soft clay or peat. So they came up with the technology of pile fields, driving thousands of wooden trunks into the soft soil. The paradox is that wood, which usually rots in a humid environment, became eternal in these conditions. The secret is that the piles were driven completely below the water table or directly into the bottom silt. In such an environment, there is a complete absence of free oxygen, which is necessary for bacteria and fungi to decompose wood. Over time, under the enormous pressure of the stone masonry above and the influence of mineralized water, amazing changes took place. The wood began to mineralize, absorbing salts from the surrounding soil and water. It became as hard as stone, sometimes even surpassing it in compressive strength. The piles were driven very close together, sometimes connecting them at the top with wooden grids or filling the gaps with stone and coal.
We must ensure
Charcoal acted as an antiseptic and filter, providing additional protection for the wood from biological activity. Driving piles was hellish work, performed with the help of primitive pile drivers powered by human or horse muscle. Today, when we uncover such foundations for restoration, We often find wood in perfect condition. It is black and hard, but retains its fiber structure as if it had been cut down yesterday. Problems only begin when the water table drops due to modern human activity. As soon as oxygen reaches the ancient piles, they begin to rot, and buildings that have stood for 800 years begin to collapse. In the next chapter, you will learn why the roof was the Lord's biggest headache. How did they survive the endless rains without roofing felt? The walls of medieval castles appear to be solid, as if carved from a single block of stone. But if you look closely, or better yet, mentally cut such a wall crosswise, as if it were a dense pie, it becomes clear that a much more complex structure is hidden inside. Medieval craftsmen, without the benefit of modern technology, created surprisingly sophisticated and well-thought-out engineering solutions, transforming raw stone into monumental fortifications. Any large fortress wall actually consisted of 3 layers. The outer and inner skins of the wall were formed from neatly hewn stone blocks. Ashlar. These blocks were selected for size, shape, and density, so that the joints were minimal and the surface was as flat and stable as possible. It was these facing rows that took the first blow: wind load, fire from siege engines, and sudden temperature changes. The facing was the face and shield of the castle. But to build the entire thickness of the wall, which could reach 3, 4, or more meters, from such expensive and labor-intensive stones, would have been not just wasteful, but outright madness for the budget of any feudal estate.
But the core reveals the true complexity.
Therefore, the space between the outer and inner skins was filled with rubble, a mixture of broken stones, gravel, cobblestones, brick fragments, and a large amount of lime mortar. This layer was called the core, or heart of the wall, and played a key role in its strength. In essence, it was the prototype of future reinforced concrete. The mortar bound the stone fragments together, and the stones themselves acted as a kind of reinforcement. Interestingly, rubble masonry not only replaced expensive hewn stone, but also provided the wall with a valuable property: plasticity. When a battering ram crashed into the wall or a stone trebuchet projectile hit it, the energy of the impact did not collapse the inner surface in a continuous wave. Instead, it was partially absorbed by the loose, chaotic structure of the rubble. The core acted as a shock absorber. It dampened vibrations, dissipating the destructive force into the thickness of the wall. To prevent the outer facing from peeling away from the core, the builders used special blocks called tick stones. These elongated stones were laid across the wall so that one end was on the facade and the other went deep into the rubble. They acted as fasteners, holding the facing and the core together into a single monolith. Without these connecting blocks, the wall could simply fall apart over time, especially under the influence of frost, moisture, and its own weight. The choice of stone was a science in itself. The craftsmen understood the properties of local rocks perfectly and knew that stone has a natural layering. If laid incorrectly, not as it lay in the quarry, the stone would begin to crumble much faster. The most difficult and expensive stage was not the construction itself, but the delivery of the stone. Transporting heavy blocks along the soggy medieval roads often cost more than the stone itself. On some walls, you can still see the marks left by stonemasons, a kind of signature of the craftsman. These symbols served as the basis for payment. Each stonemason was paid for a certain number of blocks processed, and the workshop masters strictly monitored the quality. The genius of simplicity, that's how you could describe the approach of medieval engineers. They didn't try to make materials obey them. Instead, they worked in harmony with their nature, creating structures that have survived the centuries and continue to stand to this day. What if I told you that the main enemy of a castle was not enemy armies, but ordinary water from the sky? Rain is the most persistent and relentless destroyer, working 24 hours a day without breaks or days off. If water gets inside the walls, it washes away the mortar, causes wooden floors to rot, and breaks stone when it freezes. Therefore, the roof was the most important, most expensive, and most complex element of any medieval building. Lead was considered the most prestigious and reliable roofing material, valued literally by weight against silver. Lead sheets were ideal. They did not burn, did not rust, and easily took any shape. bending around complex architectural elements. A lead roof could last for centuries, requiring only minimal repairs and remelting of old sheets. However, lead was incredibly heavy, requiring a powerful system of wooden rafters capable of supporting this enormous weight. A more affordable option was tiles made of fired clay or flat stone. Slate. Wooden shingles were the lot of poor buildings or temporary structures in the castle courtyard. They were cheap and light, but extremely flammable and short-lived, requiring replacement every 20-30 years. In conditions of constant rainfall and the use of fire arrows, a wooden roof was a death sentence for the garrison. Therefore, all important towers were covered with non-combustible materials, sparing no expense. The drainage system was no less complex than the roof itself and became a true art form. To prevent water from running down the walls and washing away the mortar, it was drained as far away from the foundation as possible. This is why the famous gargoyles were created, frightening stone monsters protruding from the walls. These were not just decorations, but long gutters from whose mouths water spewed far beyond the walls. The roof truss construction was a masterpiece of carpentry without a single metal nail. All joints were made using the tongue and groove method and fixed with wooden dowels, which expanded and contracted along with the main wood. This allowed the structure to breathe as humidity and temperature changed, without being destroyed by internal stresses. Oak for such structures was selected and dried for years so that it would not warp. The roof also often served as a battle platform surrounded by battlements, where sentries and archers were stationed. Therefore, it had to withstand not only snow and wind, but also the weight of dozens of armed men and machines. The roof was built with a slight slope so that water would drain away, but people could walk on it comfortably. The loss of the roof meant the inevitable death of the building within a few decades. The ruins we see today are mostly the skeletons of buildings that have lost their caps. As soon as the roof fell, nature instantly took over the interior, turning the halls into gardens. The struggle for dryness was an endless war with the climate waged by the inhabitants of the castles. They knew that a leaky roof was more dangerous than an enemy tunnel. In the next chapter, you will learn how an ordinary staircase could become a deadly trap for invaders. Why do you think the steps were made of different heights? The spiral staircases of medieval castles were not just a way to get upstairs, but a clever defensive device. With very few exceptions, they always turned clockwise when ascending from the bottom. This gave a huge advantage to the defender, who stood higher and held a sword in his right hand. Nothing prevented him from delivering slashing blows, using the full swing and the central pillar as cover. The attacker, climbing from below, found himself in a clearly disadvantageous and extremely uncomfortable position. But the architects went further, incorporating hidden traps into the staircases for inattentive guests. Often, one or more steps in the staircase were made to differ in height from the rest. In the heat of battle, an enemy running upstairs would instinctively miscalculate his step, stumble on the non-standard step, and lose his balance. The narrowness of the passage was another important tactical element of the tower's defense. The lighting of the staircases was also deliberately designed to play into the hands of the defenders. Narrow arrow slits were positioned so that the light would shine in the eyes of those climbing up, blinding them. The defender remained in semi-darkness, clearly seeing the silhouette of the enemy against the bright light. This created the effect of a shooting range, where the targets exposed themselves to attack. The spiral shape of the staircase also served as protection against shots from below, from crossbows or bows. An arrow could not fly along a curved trajectory, so it was impossible to shoot at the defenders from below. The defender, on the other hand, could suddenly lean out, strike a blow, and immediately hide behind the turn of the stone spiral. Every stone, every turn, every ray of light in these staircases was designed for killing. It was architecture dictated not by aesthetics, but by pure survival. Knowing these secrets, you can take a completely different look at tourist tours of old towers. A medieval window in a fortress wall bears little resemblance to the bright glass openings we call windows today. Its purpose was diametrically opposed, not to let sunlight into the room, but to release arrows, bolts, and red-hot death. Loopholes, narrow vertical openings in the thickness of the wall, were carefully calculated defensive elements, designed primarily to protect the archer. From the outside, they looked like a thin, almost invisible slit, which was incredibly difficult to hit even for an experienced crossbowman. But from the inside, the arrow slit opened up into a wide funnel-shaped extension, a niche that allowed the archer to freely move their weapon, change the angle of fire, and choose the direction for aiming without exposing their head to projectiles flying from outside. The shape of the loopholes was not static. It evolved along with the development of weapons and siege tactics. In those days, glass was not just a luxury item, it was an almost fantastical rarity. It cost a fortune, was produced only in specialized workshops, and required skills that only a few people possessed. Therefore, real glass windows could only be seen in wealthy monasteries, some temples, and sometimes in the private chambers of lords. And even there, the glass was cloudy, bubbly, uneven, letting in light but not allowing a clear view. The ordinary inhabitants of the castle were content with much simpler solutions. Windows were closed with wooden shutters, thick oiled cloth, parchment, or even stretched ox bladders. All these materials combined light transmission and thermal insulation poorly, so indoors you had to choose. Either dark but relatively warm if the shutters were closed, or light but with an icy wind blowing through the room, penetrating through the walls and cracks. Drafts in castles were not a rare occurrence, but a constant feature of everyday life. Cold air moved freely through the corridors, staircases, and halls, chilling the inhabitants to the bone. Stone walls retained the cold for a long time, turning even lived-in rooms into a kind of refrigerator. Because of this, windows, even narrow and inconspicuous ones, became centers of activity. On the upper floors, many castles had window seats, small stone platforms built into the thickness of the wall under a loophole or window. This was, in fact, the only place in the room where it was possible to work in daylight, to read, write, embroider, study maps and documents. The light coming through the narrow opening allowed for delicate work that was impossible in the depths of the room. During the daytime, life literally centered around these small islands of light. In the medieval understanding, a window was not an element of interior decoration, but a functional working tool associated with everyday life and defense. The size and shape of windows are an excellent indicator of the level of danger that characterized the era. In the early Middle Ages, even living quarters had tiny slits instead of full-fledged windows. Safety was more important than comfort. As the political situation stabilized and the power of the feudal lords grew stronger, windows became wider, and tall Gothic openings with open-work frames appeared. But even then, on the lower floors and in the fortified parts of the castle, they remained narrow, protected by thick bars. These bars were also part of the defense. They were installed during construction. The bars were embedded in the masonry so that it was impossible to break or remove them without destroying the wall. The bars were often made of square rods rather than round ones and were placed at an angle to the outside. This shape was more difficult to saw through. The saw would slip or get stuck, wearing down on the hard edges of the metal. Windows also played an important role in ventilation. Castles used open hearths, torches, and oil lamps, all of which produced smoke, soot, and fumes. Without constant draft, the air in the rooms became suffocating. Architects designed a system of drafts so that smoke rose upward and was removed through windows and smoke vents. It was a primitive but effective form of climate control, a balance between keeping the castle from becoming suffocatingly smoky and keeping it from becoming too cold. Thus, a medieval window is not just a hole in the wall. It is a complex engineering unit that combines the functions of lighting, ventilation, defense, and passive safety. Every element, from the shape of the embrasure to the angle of the grate, served a single purpose: to survive in dangerous conditions. Comfort always took a back seat to protection. Light in the medieval world was a luxury that came at the price of cold, and every window in the castle was a daily reminder of this. The castle gate is a paradox. It must let friends in and stop enemies, while essentially being a hole in the wall. That is why the gate fortifications, or barbicans, were the most complex and powerful parts of the entire fortress. It was a system of sluices, traps, and deadly surprises designed to destroy anyone who tried to enter without an invitation. Architects turned the entrance into a veritable labyrinth of death. The first obstacle was a drawbridge operated by a system of counterweights hidden inside the walls. With a single movement of a lever, the bridge rose, closing the opening and cutting off the path across the moat. The mechanism was simple and reliable, often duplicated in case of breakdown or sabotage. Even if the enemy crossed the moat, they would come up against a massive oak door reinforced with iron. But the main danger awaited behind the first door. It was a descending grate, or HRSA, a heavy structure made of wood and metal, with pointed stakes at the bottom, hung in the grooves of the wall, ready to collapse at any moment. Often there were 2 or 3 such grates, creating stone bags inside the gate passage. An enemy who broke through the first barrier found himself locked in a confined space between 2 grates. In the ceiling of this bag were so-called killer holes, openings leading to the room above the gate. Through them, the defenders could drop stones, pour boiling water, or shoot crossbows at the heads of the trapped enemies. Contrary to Hollywood myths, boiling oil was rarely used because of its high cost and scarcity. Boiling water, hot sand, which penetrated armor, or quicklime were more commonly used. The walls inside the gate passage also had loopholes facing inward, allowing attackers to be shot at point-blank range. This was crossfire in an enclosed space with nowhere to hide. The floor could be rigged with traps, collapsing sections that dropped enemies into a deep pit or basement. The gate leaves themselves were locked with a powerful wooden beam that went deep into channels inside the walls. It was extremely difficult to break down such a structure with a battering ram, as the impact was distributed across the entire thickness of the wall. The door hinges were hidden deep in the masonry so that they could not be knocked off or damaged from the outside. The gate tower was usually the tallest structure, dominating the entire area and the entrance. From its top, the garrison commander could control the defense, having the best view. Often, the most comfortable quarters were located here, as it was the safest place. The entrance to the castle was a psychological barrier, demonstrating the power and inaccessibility of the owner. Every element of the decor here had a hidden defensive function. Even the lion statues could conceal loopholes behind them. Passing through these gates in battle was an almost impossible task for any army. Most castles were taken not by storming the gates, but by attrition or treachery. Engineering thought reached its peak here, turning the passage into an impregnable fortress within a fortress. Looking at the majestic ruins, we often make the logical mistake of thinking that they were built perfectly in the past. This is the classic survivor's bias. We only see the castles that were built so well that they have survived to this day. We don't see the thousands of towers that collapsed 10 years after construction due to errors in calculations. We don't see the walls that slid into the ravine due to poor foundations, because their stones were long ago carried away by local residents. The Middle Ages saw many construction disasters, when cathedrals collapsed during services or towers fell before the roof was completed. The history of architecture is a history of trial and error, written on the ruins of failed projects. The buildings that survived are often exceptions, masterpieces into which enormous resources and the experience of the best craftsmen were invested. This is not the norm, but the elite of construction. Many of the surviving buildings stand not because they were built once and for all, but thanks to constant repairs. Each generation of owners invested in replacing the roof, strengthening the foundation, and rebuilding the walls. A castle is a living organism that dies as soon as it is no longer cared for. What we see today is the result of 800 years of continuous maintenance. The comparison with modern concrete is also not entirely correct, as we are comparing different life cycles. Modern buildings are often designed to be demolished in 50-100 years to make way for something new. A medieval lord built his family seat to last forever, without thinking about economic efficiency or changing fashions. These are different philosophies, utility versus heritage. In addition, the massiveness of medieval walls gave them enormous strength, which thin modern structures do not have. A wall 3 meters thick can lose half a meter of masonry and still stand. A modern concrete panel 20 centimeters thick has no margin for error or corrosion. The excessiveness of the material was their insurance against uncertainty and destruction. We also forget that many castles were dismantled by people themselves, rather than destroyed by time. Stones from fortress walls were used to build roads, bridges, and farmers' houses. Castles often served as free quarries for the entire region for centuries. Those that survived were often either too far away or used by the state. Nevertheless, the quality of ancient mortars and the choice of construction sites command respect. Craftsmen who did not know structural engineering intuitively understood the material better than many modern programs. They learned from nature rather than trying to conquer it, and this is their main lesson. Today, we can learn from these ruins not about technology, but about an approach to responsibility for the future. Build so that your great-grandchildren will not be ashamed of your work. This is the mentality that we have almost lost in the age of disposable things. These stones are silent, but their very existence is the loudest story of craftsmanship. Survival is not an accident. It is the result of hard work and intelligence. We see only the tip of the iceberg of a vast building culture that has faded into the past. We have come a long way from chemical reactions and boiling solutions to ingenious traps and dark corridors. The secret to the durability of medieval walls is not a single magic formula, but a complex set of solutions. These include living lime mortar capable of self-healing, the geometry of towers that deflects blows, and the use of organic materials. But above all, it is a philosophy of construction for the ages, where time was not the enemy, but the judge. Modern concrete crumbles quickly because it is too rigid and unable to adapt to change. Medieval walls survived because they were flexible, massive, and built in harmony with the laws of nature. They remind us that sometimes the simplest, time-tested solutions are more reliable than the most advanced technologies. Perhaps in the future, we will return to this forgotten knowledge to build our homes. Which ancient technology surprised you the most? Was it the use of cottage cheese and eggs in mortar, or the trick with spiral staircases? Write your opinion in the comments. We are very interested to know what you think. And be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new journeys into the mysteries of the past.